Zaitsev, head of the NKVD's 12th Department. Prologue. Patriarch's Ponds was one of Korolev's favorite corners of Moscow. A small park with a square-shaped lake around which, especially on a hot summer's day like this, white-shirted men and their befrocked womenfolk strolled with slow steps. At the southern end, a white colonnaded pavilion stood where, for a reasonable price, a citizen could sip a glass of tea and sit and watch the ducks. Alternatively, in the eastern corner of the park, there stood a wooden kiosk where beer and kvass could be purchased, and, if you knew how to ask for them, stronger beverages as well. If they'd had time to spare and a less pressing matter to attend to, Korolev thought to himself a sip of vodka mightn't have been such a bad idea, but not today, and not now. Not with a certain gangster he'd been after for 6 months, about to walk into a trap of Korolev's making. Anyway, he decided he'd need all his wits about him. Semyon Shabalin was as slippery as an eel dipped in oil, and clever with it. Korolev and his comrades had managed to catch up with most of his grey fox gang and put them where they belonged, but Shabalin had wriggled free each time they'd thought they had him, even when escape had seemed an impossibility. And while most of Moscow's underworld had certain standards, which, it had to be said, they often seemed to forget about, the grey foxes had none. With each robbery they'd committed, they'd set new standards in brutality and viciousness, so that now even the thieves, the organized clans that ran crime in Moscow, were shaking their heads in disapproval. Whatever else happened today, Korolev was determined Shabalin wasn't leaving this park a free man. Korolev walked outside the park's railings while Petya the Persuader, their informant, followed the tree-covered path that ran alongside the sky-reflecting blue water. Slivka was a few paces behind Petya, wearing a pretty white dress, her short blonde hair looking almost golden in the dappled sunlight. Her lips might be a little thin and her expression grave, but she was a good-looking woman, and he watched men's heads turn one after the other to follow her procession through the park. He wondered if they'd be so keen if they knew the hand, nonchalantly resting inside her open purse, was wrapped around the butt of a service-issue revolver. Korolev glanced at his watch. If Petya was to be believed, Shabalin would meet him on the 4th bench to the left of the pavilion in just a few minutes' time. He adjusted the ticket machine he had slung over his shoulder, part of his disguise as a tram conductor on a break, and found himself, to his surprise, wishing there was a sandwich in the tin lunchbox he was carrying, as opposed to his Walther. Korolev kept his eyes moving, examining each of the pedestrians who passed him, watching for anyone or anything that seemed out of place. If things went as he hoped, there'd be a small scuffle, and Shabalin would be in the bag. If things didn't go to plan, well, if he had to shoot Shabalin's legs from him, then so be it. Korolev took a seat beside an elderly lady 10 meters from the bench Petya now occupied. Slivka found herself a spot a little farther along the path on Petya's other side, and 2 minutes later, a familiar-looking balloon seller began hawking his wares in their general vicinity. From where Korolev was sitting, Yazimov's disguise looked less than convincing. It seemed one end of the detective's moustache was slightly higher than the other, but it was too late to do anything about it now. Korolev sighed, took his newspaper from the pocket of his coat and opened it, scanning his surroundings one more time as he did so. All was peaceful. A toy sailing boat moved slowly across the water, leaving a V-shaped wake behind it, the only disturbance on the pond's surface. It was a sweltering afternoon, and the heat seemed to be pressing down on everything, making even the noises of the city that surrounded